I hope you've been listening to some really interesting talks. I'm Charlotte, I'm from the Telegraph. I work on the fashion desk of the Telegraph, and I'm here today with three great columnists. Marcia Kilgore, who founded Bliss Spa, FitFlop, Soap and Glory, and now runs Beauty Pie. And we have Sophie Meislin Baron, who founded an amazing company called Mamamade, which and she makes homemade baby food for, I think, is it 70,000 customers now? And then we have Jenny Chu, who's an academic, and she is associate professor at the Judge Business School in Cambridge. And she has great experience. She combines sort of real-world experience in investment banking with her academic research on corporate governance and gender leadership. So hopefully we'll have a really exciting discussion today. But if you'd like to welcome everyone, just give them a little clap. So I know that you've probably already been using the app, the Slido, which I have never used, so I hope you all have got the hang of it. But ideally, we'd love to open up to questions. So if you have any questions, if you could use the app, that would be really good, and I'll keep an eye on it. So the questions that will come in, we'll leave about 10 minutes at the end for any of your questions, or longer if we have it. Okay, so I know that we're talking about scaling up. So scaling up your business from an idea. Some of you may already have an idea. Some of you may already have started your business. But how do you scale it up and make it into the kind of business that Marcia has right now? So I just wanted to talk to Marcia from the outset, just remembering that moment when you first started out, and was it 25 years ago? What it felt like to be starting a business, the kind of dilemmas and the challenges you faced, and what that really was like.
It was grueling. Yeah, grueling every day, but also at the same time really exhilarating. I think being able to deliver something to a customer and be really interfacing with them and seeing how much they love whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's a product or a service, it really gives you the energy to go on. So when I started, I really was just doing facials, right? I did facials in my second floor walk-up apartment where I'd make the customer lay on the floor. And because I didn't have a facial table, because I hadn't been able to afford one yet. And then I, from there, got a slightly larger studio and bought a table and would really interface directly with the customer and give customers the treatments. And that ability to get that feedback in real time and listen to it and then adjust accordingly, I think was invaluable. A lot of people, I think, really look forward to the part of their business where they don't have to do the hands-on. Mm-hmm. And I could say that nothing has been better in my career than making those connections, learning from the ground up every single thing that I'm doing. I used to take the laundry into the laundromat myself at 10 o'clock at night and drop it off before so that I have fresh sheets, fresh towels, et cetera, for the next day.
Yeah.
And just being able to talk to customers about what they want with, a human
in real time.
Yeah.
Sophie, because you similarly have started your business from scratch, and you have that kind of connection with your customers. How did that sort of develop in the beginning? Because you started just before lockdown, is that right?
Yeah, so the idea I had for a while, but then when I actually started, it was just me in the kitchen, and I was just selling over Instagram and connecting with people. So like Marcia said, it's interacting with people and making the food myself and packing it up and then driving to their homes and actually sitting in their homes and seeing what their homes are like and understanding what problem we were solving for them with this food. And it's sort of that. We're at a different stage now, and I still try to kind of do that on occasion because it's just an incredible experience to be physically with your customer, especially when you're building a digital brand. It can be very easy to kind of have that arm's length away from them or kind of reduce it down to data points or actions. And really how I was able to get out of my kitchen was because I was just meeting face to face and having these conversations that we're still having now.
How did you kind of turn, because initially you were cooking in your kitchen, you were cooking the baby food. How did you turn sort of, because I think you started by doing it for friends. How did you make that into a kind of financial thing? So turning it from something you were doing to help people that you knew because you had a germ of idea to actually charging them? Because I think that's kind of a leap that's quite difficult.
So I suppose the way that the initial stages were definitely, making it for friends and getting feedback and then handing it out to friends of friends. And I mean, I was sort of embarrassed if you were to see pictures of the kind of baggies that I was literally like handing out to people at music classes and things and just asking like, is this a product you would use? And what I started to do was just post a lot more on Instagram, which never felt natural to me at all. I'm actually a very shy person by nature. And so putting myself out there on the internet and just connecting with other people. For me as an expat here in the UK, I found new motherhood extremely lonely. I found it extremely isolating, and I wasn't meeting anybody else who was feeling that sort of lukewarm about motherhood until I was connecting with them online, and people saying to me, I would buy that. And then it's like, okay, what would you spend for that? And how much would you want? And making it that sort of interactive process with the customer until it was still on Instagram for a while over, DM being like, I would buy that, I would buy that. And then as you say, there's that moment where you take a leap and just have to go all in and do it properly.
Yeah. Jenny, from your point of view, I mean, I think that you've got the idea and then you have to go and get the funding, or you have to think, how am I going to finance that? And often people who do businesses are quite creative and they might not necessarily have that business brain as well. How do you advise women who you speak to?
So first, may I just turn it back to the audience? I know this morning Trini did a little bit of a poll, but please raise your hands again if you want to start a business or are in the process of starting a business. Yes, please. Wonderful. Wow. I'm so impressed. Now, how many of you have a business plan? I know Trini asked that question earlier. Very good. Now, how many of you have what I would call, I think the panel here being from North America, would call elevator pitch, do you say a lift pitch?
Elevator, no, you say that.
Okay, how many of you have a elevator pitch? So 3 to 5 minutes of your unique business proposition, why you're different, why you're filling a differentiated market need, and why they should invest with you. Very good. You need that, okay? The slide deck, it's great to have, but the more important thing is be able to tell your story in 3 to 5 minutes and be able to convince people that you have a great product and actually, even more importantly, that investors, right? Even angel investors, even venture capitalists, they will tell you that they're investing in you, the person, not necessarily the business plan, even though the business plan has to be great. And you have to have a good story, okay? Why? Because 90% of businesses fail. And so what happens is if they invest in you because they know you're good, and if your initial idea fails, that's okay. You'll pivot. Like Marcia and Sophie, I mean, you will pivot and you will make it work. So it's very important for you to network, to get out there, to meet investors. And when people know you, trust you, they will invest with you.
I'd like to build on that a little bit if I can. I would think that, if you haven't started yet, and I really agree with you, Jenny, about the 3 to 5 minute pitch, I'm more brutal and say you got to be able to explain it in 1 or 2 sentences. And then you have to ask, so what? Or have someone ask you, well, so what? And you have to be able to answer so what in 1 sentence. And if you haven't gotten to the point where, right, you can say, here's my idea, blah, 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 it's better because blah, blah, blah. And someone says, so what? And you can't say, well, blah, 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 and take them down. Knock their feet right out. Spend more time there. Get that done. Make sure that is like rock solid, because you can spin a lot of wheels and spend a lot of time and money and opportunity cost doing something that actually maybe isn't going to get you there. But if you would have spent another month thinking every day for an hour about the so what, right, up front, you'll probably get there a lot faster once you get started. And I sometimes kick myself and think, well, I should have honed this or honed that by doing a little bit of work up front, although I do tend to kind of dive in.
So that's a really good point, but to just build on that's why networking is important, because you should get your friends, family, your husband, your sister, your neighbor to listen to your pitch, and then they will give you feedback, and they're all good feedback. People in the audience.
How that thing though, when you're getting people to give you negative feedback, and you've got to try and have the confidence, that self-belief. I don't know whether Sophie, we talked a little bit about that kind of confidence gap that women have, and how do you develop that sense of belief in yourself?
I think it is about building your resilience up and speaking openly about your idea and and building up that network. So for Mamamade, then I shared it with my bosses at the time. I was like, I have this idea, and they were like, okay, great, sit here, work part-time, and do the rest on Mamamade, and having that support from them. But I didn't actually take it off of Instagram into a proper sort of e-commerce thing for a while. And for a long time, I kind of said, it's the confidence. I didn't have the confidence. In a past life, I was doing a PhD, which I quit. And I look back now and I think, I quit because I didn't have the confidence to actually do it in myself. And I think it's widely known that confidence is, or I guess widely spoken about, let's say, that confidence can be gendered. But I think we're getting to a place where it's almost like weaponized, where now as women we're sort of like, I didn't go for that raise because of my confidence, or I didn't do that because of my confidence. And so then you kind of have this world building around that where there's specific women-focused training to improve your confidence. And I think it comes back almost just to those brass tacks of what are your competencies? Like, know yourself really well and know where you add that value, and then build up your network and build up these support systems so that you can plug those gaps and get that support that you need, because you're not going to be able to do this on your own. And also I can think of very few men who would think, I should have done that, I should have done this. So definitely realizing when you're having these thoughts and learning how to kind of whack them out of the way. In my experience, just takes a bit of practice of noticing you're having those thoughts.
Because I suppose the other part of a business is growing it and bringing on people and becoming a boss. So you have to have that confidence then with the people who work around you. And it may be that you bring in people who are more experienced in some aspects of your business than you are. So Marcia, how did you deal with that when you first started employing people? And
I've employed people who are doing the same thing at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
They were also doing facials, or they were doing manicures, or they're doing, and that's a completely different level to now where I am employing people who do growth marketing, or,
the things that seem complicated and different.
Yeah, complicated and different, but actually once you get into it and you understand it, it's not. I think many of us think that things are very, very complicated and things are hard, and it's more fear that's telling us, I'd never understand that, but actually if you just open a book or have a discussion about it, you realize that most things are not that difficult or hard to grasp. Of course, if we're talking about advanced calculus, or some people have brains for that, some people do not. But
that's also trainable.
Yes, it's trainable.
It really is.
And you may have, you may be slightly naturally better.
I mean, there's Einstein, of course.
Yes, of course. So if you're not Einstein,
but it's still buildable for sure.
Everything is buildable.
Yeah.
Everything is about practice and exposure. If you're exposed to it, and you kind of accept it, it doesn't end up being so scary. So I think I read something once that said just lean into and leap or run towards change. And I'd say that probably many of us don't want things to change. People do not want things to change, right? It's so much easier if things don't change. Change is very scary to a lot of people. If you can just start thinking, actually, I am the type of person who runs toward change, that's going to help you a lot. Be that person. Tell yourself you're that person. Embrace change. I'm going to learn something new, right? What can go wrong if you embrace change? Nothing. But many of us are kind of like, oh my God, I don't know. And that holds you back quite a lot.
But Jenny, I was wondering, in terms of that kind of financial advice, where would you, are there specific places that you could go to actually get that very sort of specific advice about how you fund a business, if you wanted to pitch for investors?
Well, one really good place to go in the UK, we're very lucky here actually, is a place called Innovate UK. I don't get a commission from them. It's actually a government-funded body, so they give grants, and especially they have a women award, Women Innovation Award. So they give, I believe, I believe it's £50,000, and that's actually, there's some strings attached, but they don't take, a piece of your equity. So they don't take a piece of your business. So that 50,000 is just for you to develop your idea. And they give mentoring, and so it's a fantastic program for you to go. And that's basically free money in the sense of if you get it, you don't, give away a piece of yourself, if you will. Otherwise, there are also angel networks. In the UK, HMRC is actually very generous with high earners if they invest in startups. So there are actually great angels networks because it works, great tax incentives for high earners to defer income taxes when they invest in startup companies. So there's coming from Cambridge, there's Cambridge Angel Network, but there's also a Green Angel Syndicate for green-related projects. Lots and lots of different ones. But the key again is to don't just go cold to these networks. Try to network first. Find somebody who's associated with it. Pitch your idea with them first, and then develop it, refine it, and make sure it's really sharp and ready to go before you actually go and pitch it to the investors.
Jenny, actually, a question has just come in that I thought was relevant to what you were talking about. From Danny, they've asked, what's your experience with social investors? How can we lead in purpose-led businesses and lenders who value social returns?
Yeah, so impact investing, huge area. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of demand from asset owners. But asset owners is just a fancy word to say these are pension funds, people who own and manage the money. It's actually our money because if you contribute to the pension fund, that's our money. But so there's a lot of demand for impact investing, and valuations in those businesses have gone up. And so if you have an angle for impact investing, that is great. You are going to actually have a slightly easier time in terms of getting investor attention. That's not to say it's going to be easy. It's going to be really, really, really hard.
And to Marcia around the question of investment, I'm not sure that you had investors from the get-go, but what's been your kind of process with approaching investors, and how have you approached the pitch, or how do you speak to people who are going to lend you money or work with you?
Well, at the beginning, I just stuffed money under my mattress from the facials I was giving and saved it and spent nothing. And I think I had like a sofa and a small television that somebody gave me and a vacuum cleaner Hoover. For a couple of years and saved my money to start my own business. So I think if you can bootstrap it at the beginning, that is great because you can actually prove out your idea without having to worry about everything else. Often if an idea, of course, if you have some kind of idea like an electric car, it's going to be difficult to do that if your salary doesn't allow you to pay for that kind of engineering. But if there's anything you can do to just get started on your own, I would highly recommend, because spending your own money is very different from spending somebody else's. You will think about your business completely differently. Your employees, you will coach them in a different way because everyone will learn to be really frugal, and you'll be smarter because you've spent your own money. When you then get somebody else's money in because you've proved your idea out, you will treat it with more care and it will go further. I think there's a lot of talk out there right now in the venture capital world about how much runway you have left, right? Because there are a lot of businesses who've just been blowing cash because it was somebody else's cash, and now suddenly the economy has turned and they don't have more than 3 months left worth of cash to spend in their business. And that can be a really terrible situation to be in if you don't know how to spend it. So if you can bootstrap as long as possible. Yeah. And then, of course, approaching investors, everything that these guys have already said. I mean, obvious one, but like Dragon's Den, Shark Tank, who watches it? Do you watch it? Right. I mean, write down, what are they doing? What are they saying? In which order? That is it. That's your template for how to pitch. Yeah. And then, of course, you can download a business plan template from the internet and fill it out if you have no idea otherwise how to do it, and actually build your plan that way. Yeah. And then, of course, get somebody who knows a little graphic design to put it together. But investors aren't necessarily looking for fancy presentations. They're looking for a really, really well-honed idea with a really great why, and a really great answer to the so what question.
Sophie, I know we talked before about bringing in different people to help you with your business, and you had a great bit of advice about kind of knowing when they're the right person or not the right person. Can you?
I suppose, yeah. I guess going back to that bootstrapping, and that's how Mamamade started, and then you get to a point where you see the opportunity to go bigger and get bigger, and you're bringing other people into the business, and you're getting more voices, and it can be very tempting, I suppose, and back on that confidence point, to believe that there's somebody out there who might be able to sort of solve your business for you, or be that silver bullet that's going to help you achieve those goals really quickly. And what I've had to learn the hard way, so I'll share it today, is that no one actually knows your business or your objectives or what you're trying to build as well as you do. And so when you are bringing people into the business, it's important to make sure that you, again, going back to that point, understanding your own superpower and what actually you're trying to fill in terms of a gap when it comes to talent, because everyone's going to have a sales pitch, especially once people get wind that you've raised some money or have some money to spend, and really understanding what you're building and understanding what you want out of your vision is going to make it a lot easier to parse through a lot of the noise that comes through, because building that business is the job, and whoever's promising you a silver bullet to make it go like that is, I would just be a bit have some hesitations around that.
Yeah. Jenny, do you think women do face very different challenges when they're starting businesses and growing businesses?
Yes. One of the things that, as I said, 90% of businesses fail. Obviously, yours, are the successes. But there's a lot of research that show that, women tend to internalize failure, whereas men don't. I mean, there was already some discussion about this. So just understand it. And then, but again, going back to statistic, right? That 90% of businesses fail. So if yours didn't work out, that's actually expected. There's nothing wrong with you, okay? And then just go back and start again. I think that's really key. The other thing I would say also, and going back to the networking point again, is there's also research that show that people will give you a raise, promote you, and invest in you if they like you, literally. And so, but it's not about the socialized women, gendered, people must like me. No, it's not that. But it's more going back to sort of networking, and not just, I also host women's conferences. It's great that lots of great women, but also network with men, right? Lots of men have been been privileged to have male mentors, and they're great boosters. At the end of the day, a lot of them are still in, places where they can help you go along. So it's okay. And so that really helps. And also, to be honest, the after 5 pints after work, sometimes for women, it's really tempting to skip them because you have to pick up your kids or you have other priorities. But actually, those things really help you connect with your colleagues and make them trust in you. And it's actually very important to do it.
One of the questions that's come in about being, to you, Marcia and Sophie, about being a solopreneur, and how you kind of make that transition from solopreneur to a thriving company, and when it's sort of dependent on you, and you've got to make that shift. I mean, what does that feel like, or how do you? I don't know who wants to answer the question, or both.
So I'm actually not a solopreneur. I mean, I was.
Right. Okay.
I was definitely that early stage was me on my own, and then when it started to get bigger than I thought I could manage, I actually brought in my husband as a co-founder. So again, talking about pitching, an elevator pitch, that was probably the best pitch I've ever given. Because he was like, I'm never getting involved in food and I'm not doing anything with you in business. And then, 6 months later, he did. I from my experience, I did need that sounding board, and I did need it to be someone that I trusted who had the track record in business to help me get it out of my house. I definitely would love to hear what Marcia has to say on the topic.
Well, I think I always bring in people who fill parts of the puzzle that I don't. And so I think, you're looking for people who are complementary to your skill set, and also that you like to spend time around. I think that's so important, to look forward to going to the office in the morning. And it can be really hard. I mean, many days are very, very hard. You're going to have more bad days than good days. The good days seem to last, they're quick, and then they go away, and then you're dealing with some other problem. And to have somebody that you actually love to spend time with, who also complements your skill set, who will challenge you, who respectfully, who you can have a good laugh with. I mean, I think it's just so important. You have to hire somebody that you want to be around.
What about that issue, though, if you like being around them but they're not doing their job properly? How do you scale up to be a kind of brilliant manager when you've never necessarily done that before?
Well, you have to, obviously, job descriptions, OKRs, right? You have to put together, here's what your expectations are, and those have to be really clear. In the end, everything breaks down because of communication, right? If it's not going right, it's either because you haven't communicated what is necessary as the leader of the business, what you expect to come back, and if you're unhappy, you need to be able to sit down and calmly, openly, honestly, and immediately discuss those things. Don't let them build up, because they always become way bigger than they are. It's like when you're irritated with something your sister has done, right? You got to get it out right away before it becomes a big thing. And if you can treat everybody who is working for you is trying to do the very best they can with the skills that they've got, the experience that they've got, and always assuming that everyone is doing their best, I think really helps as well. But communication and, lists, bullet points, checklists, all of that is key.
Another thing that I was interested in you were saying, just on that, I love the way you break things down into smaller. You were saying about lots of people when you start your business, you have a huge vision and you've got this idea and you might have put it on the wall, but then you've got those daily tasks. How do you kind of separate the vision from the day-to-day?
I've actually found that the entrepreneurs who are the most successful are the ones who can actually start doing something and can figure out in like a mess how to start actually getting something done. Or you get to this level and it kind of stops functioning, and if you're a really good entrepreneur, you can bring everybody around the table and go, okay, this is the problem. And, people kind of look at each other and no one actually then does that next step. And one of the skills that you have to develop is figuring out how to get people around a table in a room and say, okay, the new process for this is, we need to get this done. Here's how we're going to actually do it. You're going to do this. You're going to pass it to this person. It's almost like being a football coach, right? Where you have to teach them how to do the plays. And to build a business, you need to have these structures and processes in place. And that isn't necessarily something that comes naturally, but you have to figure out how to make things automatically done by all those members of your team. And it can be really basic, but sometimes you have to go all the way back down and explain those basic things to put together these new processes so that people aren't just standing around looking at each other, waiting for somebody else to get that in place. So
how have you managed that?
What question was
Well, it was really just about how do you turn a vision into a reality?
Yeah, one tiny little step at a time.
Yeah. Sophie, what kind of mechanisms have you learnt have you learnt them from your previous jobs or?
Yeah, I suppose, again, it's reminding yourself that most things are learnable. So if you aren't confident in that position, and I can say, I wasn't always, it's, again, finding out either the people that will help you learn what you need to do. So is that a coach? Is that a mentor? Is it speaking to other founders, other business owners, and allowing, again, what we were saying just earlier, like how you are, you can change. you don't say, oh, I'm not a good manager, or I don't know what I'm doing. Like, learn it and then change. So I definitely have been through that process myself, and bringing people into the business who can help put those structures and processes into place, because I definitely skew more on the kind of creative side and not as much on the let's drive this forward side. But I've learned to, again, learning gives that confidence.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I was thinking about, Marcia, about when you launched Beauty Pie. It was obviously very disruptive. I wonder whether you could talk about that, because you were doing something that no one had done before. So what that's like, because obviously every new business is something new and not been done. So
yeah, sure. It was actually spurred on by a couple of moments in my own life. Once I was heading to China to work on a footwear collection for my footwear brand, FitFlop, and they don't necessarily heat the factories. We were in the factory with the teams and actually building the shoes, and they don't necessarily heat the factory until quite late in the season, so it can be quite cold. And actually, the hotels can be quite cold until quite late in the season. And I had forgotten to bring moisturizer, and I had not. Right, so it's November, and I'm like above 35 years old. Let's just put it that way. So you need your moisturizer, and I hadn't bought a moisturizer in such a long time, because I'd always had at that time Soap and Glory, before that Bliss. All of the labs that produce stuff for beauty brands had just been sending me stuff free, because they're trying to sell you their next concoction. And so I hadn't, it was kind of like when George Bush went shopping for groceries, or was it Obama? I didn't know how much milk cost. It's like I didn't know how much moisturizer actually cost on the market, because I hadn't paid for it for such a long time. And I went into a duty-free shop, and this happened to me last week too, because I forgot my toiletries. And I had to buy moisturizer in the duty-free shop. The first time I was like, forget it. I am not paying $85 for this moisturizer. I know it costs $5. I'm not doing it. It happened last week. I had to buy an 83 franc moisturizer in the Swiss airport on my way to Finland, because talk about cold, but that can do to your face. Oof. And so I thought, you know what? Why should anybody be paying these crazy prices for beauty products and these crazy markups? Can we all get them cheaper? And then just trying to figure out, how do we do this en masse? How do I get, women love beauty products, we all do, And if we could get a better deal on them, it would be like being a kid in a candy shop. It's like going into the back door of the labs and being able to access everything for cheaper. It's always the fun part, right? So I remember being in a train station in Milan, coming back from a lab, had this huge bag of free samples, which I knew cost, like $5, $6, or $10, whatever they were. Going into a Sephora, seeing the exact same products, these were all makeup products, for 65 euros, and thinking, I wish all my girlfriends could come here with me to this lab because they would just love this. And that was it. It was like, all my girlfriends can come with me to this lab. I just have to set up a website, right? Of course, then you have to figure out, okay, how do you do it? How do you pay your bills? And all that kind of stuff. And that took a little while to work out. So when you think about, okay, the time you spend up front with your idea, it was like, well, how are we going to do it? Now, did we do it right? No, totally wrong. Have had to adjust a little bit along the way because people didn't understand the complexity of it, which we thought,
right.
Sometimes you'll think everybody understands what you're talking about. That's where it would have been way better for me to talk to a lot of people about it first, including the execution. So when we give you the advice, like go tell somebody, go talk to somebody about it, make them sign a non-disclosure agreement first. Those you can download from the internet. Everything is on Google. And then talk to them and talk all the way through how you're going to execute this.
Actually, some of the questions, I'm going to go to some of the questions. You've got lots of great questions here, but one of the ones is relatable to what you're saying is how valuable, and I was going to ask Jenny on this, do you think a business coach or mentor is?
Hugely important. Yes, get mentors. I mean, we have 2 on the stage right now. Go network with them during the break. And there's nobody better to teach you when they've done it. Okay? Very important. And come to Cambridge, come to our entrepreneurship center, come to our women's leadership center.
What's the best way to find a mentor?
For me, and there's research that have shown this, organic pairing is the best, right? So there are some big companies out there that do, the HR does some mentoring pairing. Usually those don't work out very well, right? Because, you have to have the chemistry, you have to like the person. And so it's important to go out there and just, find the person that you want to be and then approach them. And they could always say no, and then you find the next person. But and often they do say yes. And then ask them targeted questions, and then also follow up, thank them, tell them that you've done it, and they love hearing that. And so, don't you think?
I think listen to the advice.
Yeah,
take it.
Yes,
I've actually mentored some people in the past who didn't take the advice, and then the next month we'd be on a call and they'd say, well, I didn't, and it's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I don't have like a half an hour every month to be telling you what to do and then you don't go and do it.
Yeah, well, that's so dispiriting.
Yes. Although I would also say, Jenny, that making mistakes, as long as they're small and don't bankrupt you, like don't bet your house, but when you make a mistake, it actually becomes part of your body. I don't know how to describe this, but when you make a really painful mistake, there's no learning like doing something wrong and it being painful, because you won't do it again. So I can tell you, don't do this or do that, and you may believe it or not and whatever, but man, until you have lost $50,000 of your own money, you do not learn the lesson quite as well. So yes, businesses will go under. Yes, you will make mistakes. Try to make them small, right? But feel them, absorb them, think, why did that happen? It's actually great to learn from them. And there's nothing like making them yourself.
That's really key, but I think you have the makeup in you to pick yourself up and learn. And I think Sophie touched upon that too. So how did you, is that learned and how did you develop it? Because that's really hard to learn from your mistakes.
One of the questions here is, we know that entrepreneurship is tough and you work really hard. How do you manage, and I thought we'd ask Sophie this, how do you manage to maintain your health and well-being? And are you actually happy and fulfilled?
Gosh, how much time do you have? I actually can say, like, hand over my heart, I feel extremely fulfilled. And I say that as someone who has 2 small children, that for me, I find motherhood more fulfilling because I have Mamamade, and I find being a startup founder, entrepreneur, much more fulfilling because I have a very rich family life. So I do feel very fulfilled. Thank you for asking. And I think it's about carving out that time for yourself. It doesn't need to be big things, but kind of owning that it's very easy to get swept up in the business or in what other people are asking of you, what the business needs, what employees need, what customers need. But putting up a boundary and owning it and knowing that it can be something really small, like reading a book on the tube. That's my self-care. The things that feel like they're uniquely yours. And again, connecting with other people in business who just get it, because oftentimes your family, your friends, they might not get it. So actually having open and vulnerable conversations with other people in business, finding those ways to create compassionate connections, really makes the journey that much easier.
It's interesting. And another question from the room is, which I thought I'd ask Marcia, as your business scaled, how do you manage staff roles changing from kind of more generalist to more specialist focused roles?
Well, I have a great HR person. So, I mean, you kind of see who you need as you move along. And some people really outgrow. Often it's quite natural attrition. So people will feel uncomfortable, and this isn't everybody, but you'll see people who want to go the distance and really learn and take on the new stuff and learn and are curious, right? Curiosity is actually one of the number one things that headhunters look for when they're trying to find CEOs, by the way. So if you're not curious, develop it. Figure it. If you're not the kind of person who's reading something and then clicks on something and then clicks something further and then reads another thing and clicks and further, right? Learn that skill, because the more you read, the more you have these little dots in your sky of information that connect together to give you new ideas and to solve problems. I can't remember the question again.
It was about
specialize. Yes, sorry, I do this all the time. It's terrible. So, you will have people who just naturally, the stress of growing with their role becomes too much and they prefer to move somewhere else, and that's all right, right? If someone leaves, I will always, when someone leaves the business or gets another job, I wish them well and I thank them for what they've done for us in the time that they were there. And if they didn't feel, for some reason, that they were either to take themselves to the next level or come to the next level with everybody else who is going to the next level, it's a personal choice. I never take it. I used to take it personally. When I was younger. I was like, it was like a blow to the heart or a blow to the head every time somebody would quit. And now I'm like, you know what? If it's not for them, that's all right. Like we know where we're going. We know what we need, and we will find somebody who's excited about being there. And it changes all the time.
Have you worked with people through the different businesses? Have you worked with some of the same
come
people?
Along.
Yes, come along.
Yeah. One.
I was thinking one in the audience today.
May I just quickly add that investors can also help you. One of the key value propositions from a venture capitalist, for example, they will tell you that take my money because I also have the network and I can plug in these people once your stage is at the right place.
Excellent
so
point.
that's important.
So investors are they can act as not necessarily mentors, but they'll help you grow. And
because it helps them grow their investments. Yeah.
So do you think that's important to kind of build that relationship with the investor? Will they kind of say from the outset, I'm going to help you in X number of ways?
Yes, the better ones. So especially when you're in a privileged position where there are people chasing you with money, then you definitely want to pick the right investor.
Yeah. Are
Will
there
help
any
you
sort
grow.
of key questions you should ask an investor?
Key question. I think it's more actually that investors, we can talk about it offline, but there are certain ones that are well known to have a network versus certain ones who are less well known.
Yeah.
So it's always better to take the ones that are well known, that have invested in companies that have done well and they have the infrastructure.
Right. Yeah. We've got a couple of minutes left and we've got a few questions, but I'd love to get a tip from each of you that everyone can take away with them. So sort of a one sentence kind of bite-sized takeaway.
I'm going to sound like a broken machine. I'm sorry, or a broken record, I should say. Network, and practice.
That's okay. I guess, I'm also a broken record, but really get to know yourself and what your superpower is to the business, and then you've built in around that. And you can't skimp on getting to know your customer and really understanding why they want your service or what you're offering, because their idea might be different from your idea, but then you can adapt to actually meet their needs. So, those are probably my two main ones.
Amazing.
And I would say, number one, there are no shortcuts. So if you think there's some golden, shortcut, there isn't. So just stop looking for it, because you're wasting time. And we don't waste time, don't waste money, don't waste energy.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody.